So as a bodybuilder, we have another issue. We eat a lot of food. So some people's beta cells can't keep up with producing enough insulin for the amount of food that we need to consume. You hear some of these top bodybuilders eating 1,000 grams of carbs a day. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. Dave Palumbo here with an RxMuscle supplement and science review. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about insulin production in the body and what might disrupt it, what might help it, how you could monitor it, and how you can optimize it. I think there's a lot of questions about natural insulin production, exogenous insulin production, which is insulin you would take, outside of what your body produces. Should I use a long-acting insulin? Should I use a short-acting insulin, fast-acting insulin? And which are better and which would benefit me? Well, first of all, I always tell all my guys and women now to start testing your fasting blood sugars. That means go to Walmart if you're in the United States and you have access to that. They sell a $9 blood sugar monitor. Walmart is really good for insulin and insulin measuring techniques and blood sugar measuring. They have really, I think the government subsidizes them in some capacity. So if you want to get a really cheap blood sugar monitor that works well, rely on blood sugar monitor, $9. You can buy the test strips. I buy 100 test strips for I think it's $17, or you can buy 50 for $9 or something like that. It's like really ridiculously cheap. And test your blood sugar in the morning. You don't have to necessarily test it during the day. Test it when you wake up first thing in the morning fasting. Get your numbers down. Your numbers should be under 90 consistently. If they're over 90 and they're bordering on high 90s or into the hundreds in the morning, you're too high. Now, the question is, why are you too high? And I've done videos about this before. The reason I'm doing this is I want to add something, because I know a lot of people nowadays are taking medications for their heart, some people for blockages or potential blockages to prevent blockages in their coronary arteries. They take statins. Okay, I don't know if you guys are taking statins who are watching this, but if you take a statin, something that blocks LDL cholesterol, remember LDL cholesterol carriers are the cholesterol carriers that take cholesterol and travel around the body and potentially can dump it into areas it shouldn't be. So we theoretically want lower LDL cholesterol. The new thinking now is that LDL cholesterol numbers are not as important as what your triglyceride levels are. Triglycerides in the body are how fatty acids travel in the body. And what causes higher triglycerides in the body is actually not eating fat, believe it or not. It's eating sugar. Eating sugar and carbs raises triglycerides in the bloodstream. And what happens is the liver's job is to take up the excess amounts of triglycerides and store them and then break them down. When there's too many triglycerides in the bloodstream and the liver is overwhelmed and overfull with these triglycerides, which can be also known as fatty liver, and the triglycerides are still in the bloodstream because the liver can't hold anymore, you're said to have high triglycerides. It's usually over 150, I think. If your triglycerides are over 150 and you have high LDL cholesterol, that is a risk factor for coronary artery disease, meaning blockages in those arteries that supply the heart with blood. If you block those off completely, you have a heart attack, okay? So we don't want that. So a lot of times we'll see doctors knee-jerk put people on statins if they have high LDL cholesterol that's uncontrolled with diet and or supplements. Usually I get guys on Fiberlyze and Omega-Lyze, which is an essential fatty acid supplement, and the LDLs go right down and everything into normal. The triglycerides go back to normal and everything looks good. In some people who have a genetic predisposition to have high LDL, you then have to look at what their triglycerides are, because if their LDL is high but the triglycerides are normal, it's not a big deal. But if LDL is high and the triglycerides are high, my next step would be to change their diet, maybe even put them on a ketogenic diet for a while to get those triglyceride levels down. Because nothing lowers triglycerides better, believe it or not, than a ketogenic diet, because the body is using fat for fuel. It just gobbles up all those triglycerides, and you're not making more because you're not eating any sugars or carbs. So that's a good solution. But if you take a statin for whatever reason, the doctor convinces you to, you want to take one, you have to be careful, because there's a lot of evidence now to show, and I know a few of my clients are showing the evidence of it. I mean, I see it all the time. I have every client of mine taking their fasting blood sugars. They're running high fasting blood sugars on these statins. And it's been shown that statins can stop the pancreas, the beta cells of the pancreas, from producing insulin at efficient rates, meaning that if the pancreas normally produces at 100%, maybe it's only producing at 75% now. And we know that these statins can do that. Another thing that I discovered, okay, was I was on a beta blocker, metoprolol, which blocks beta-1 receptors on the heart, which slows it down a little bit so it doesn't get overstimulated, prevents you from getting arrhythmias. For whatever the reason, they wanted me on that after I had my heart surgery, my aortic surgery. So I just was taking, knee-jerk, trying to be a good patient, right? And I noticed that around the time that I started taking that, also I was running high fasting blood sugar. So I figured, well, you know what? I ate 12 meals a day for 15 years. I was the 300-pound bodybuilder. I took growth hormone. Maybe my insulin, I got old. It's caught up to me, and my insulin production is not so good. So I went on a long-acting insulin because I refuse to have any, high blood sugar related side effects. Even though I was only like in the 99, 98, 97 range, that's too high. I knew it was. So I, got a prescription. I take 2JO once a day, and it's been controlling my blood sugars. Well, I did a little experiment the other day, and I went off the beta blocker for a week when I was in Vegas, because to be honest with you, I forgot to bring it. And my blood sugars were going super low. I was waking up with 60 blood sugars. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? And I realized that by stopping the beta blockers also inhibit insulin production. Now, it's interesting that beta blockers block beta-1 receptors and beta-2 receptors and beta-3 receptors on blood vessel walls, but we just happen to call the pancreatic producing cells of the pancreatic producing insulin cells beta cells. And it's interesting that beta blockers block beta cells from doing their job. It's just a coincidence that they have the same name, but it is sometimes in life there are no coincidences, right? So I noticed that, and I said, holy mackerel, this beta blocker I'm taking is messing up my insulin production. So you have to be aware that there are drugs out there that will mess with insulin production. And if that's the case, then you have to do something about it, okay? Because you don't want to run high blood sugars during the day. Because if you're running high blood sugars, those extra sugars in the blood will start to gunk up. Almost think of it as like they're sticky. Sugar's sticky, right? It starts gunking up the kidney tubule filtering apparatus. It'll gunk up your eyes, the retinas of your eyes, the blood supply to them. It'll gunk up the blood supply, the capillary beds to your brain, can cause dementia long-term. They say type 3 diabetes, dementia diabetes. That's what they're calling it now. It's long-term, not high, super high blood sugars, but just slightly high blood sugars over a long period of time can lead to dementia because of so you cannot allow your blood sugars to run over 90 for long periods of time. That's not healthy for you. So as a bodybuilder, we have another issue. We eat a lot of food. So some people's beta cells can't keep up with producing enough insulin for the amount of food that we need to consume. You hear some of these top bodybuilders eating 1,000 grams of carbs a day. We're not meant to eat 1,000 grams of carbs today. The insulin production in the pancreas can't do it. And a lot of times you're taking 6, 7, 8 IUs of GH a day, which is also working antagonistically opposite of what insulin's trying to do. Insulin's trying to store stuff. GH is trying to mobilize it. And what happens is we run high blood sugars because of this. So if you are running high fasting blood sugars, but your sugars 2 hours after meals, those are known as postprandial blood sugars. So if you take your blood sugar 2 hours after a meal, as long as it's under 130, you're good. If you're over 130 after 2 hours after you eat, then you're really not, your insulin production is really not good. Most people, though, after their meals are fine. Most bodybuilders, it's usually those morning blood sugars. That's called first phase insulin failure. And when that happens, you don't want to wait till you get to second phase insulin failure because then you're screwed. You want to address it. And the best way to address it is with a long-acting insulin, not a short-acting, not a fast-acting insulin. That's not going to solve those fasting blood sugars Because remember, when you go to sleep at night, even if you eat no carbs the night before, the meal before bed, during the night, 2 hours before you normally wake up, your body releases a ton of sugar from the liver. Okay, the liver stores glycogen. It pumps out a ton of glucose into the bloodstream because it's getting the body ready to wake up so it has energy when it wakes up. If your pancreas cannot respond and release enough insulin to absorb all that sugar that the liver just cranked out, you're going to wake up with high fasting blood sugars, and that's how you know your pancreas is a little sluggish. So what we do is we give a long-acting insulin. Now, not everyone can get convinced their doctor to write them a prescription for insulin, because the best two insulins are really Tresiba and Toujeo, because those are true 24-hour insulins. Matter of fact, they last almost 36 hours. You take them once a day, like before bed or like with your last meal before bed, and they'll last for 24 hours. But for most people, they can't get a prescription for it. The doctors won't do it because these doctors don't know yet. Maybe this will be common knowledge 10 years from now, but right now these doctors are in the dark. They're prescribing metformin and all kinds of other crap that's not doing the job. It's not fixing the problem, which is that there's a lack of insulin there. So you can go to Walmart. I mentioned that earlier. They sell Novolin N. That's normal insulin. It's what it stands for. Novolin N, not Novolin R. Novolin N. And they sell it for $25 a bottle. You don't need a prescription. You get that, and you could take that twice a day, because that's not a 24-hour insulin. It's like an 18-hour insulin, so you need 2 shots a day every 12 hours. And, there is a protocol. If you want to reach out to me, I can help you fix that. It's not a one-size-fits-all, so I can't give it here. It would be irresponsible to do that. You kind of have to fit it to match it to what your blood sugar levels are. And it has to be tweaked over the course of a couple of weeks till you get the numbers exactly right. But if you do that and you supplement like you would supplement like taking hormone replacement, testosterone, you're taking insulin replacement, essentially long-acting insulin replacement. You don't have to worry about what you eat. It works in the background. So it's not going to you're not going to take a shot and you're going to go low. That's only those fast-acting insulins do that. And then once we get your blood sugars down to under 90 when you wake up in the morning, that's the perfect level, and you just stay on that. Usually bodybuilders that are pre-contest do not need the long-acting insulin because their carb intake is low or lower. It's usually in the off-season that we run into these problems. So it's important to address this, and it's also important to understand what causes this. Eating large meals, taking GH, taking beta blockers, taking statins, these can all raise fasting blood sugars in the morning. And we have to address it. Why? Because we don't want to have health problems, but also if you're not efficiently absorbing the glucose in your bloodstream, okay, you're probably not efficiently absorbing the amino acids in your bloodstream either. Taking a long-acting insulin will help you grow better, and it will actually make you lose fat more efficiently. I know it sounds weird because insulin's a fat storage hormone, but if you're utilizing the nutrients you eat properly, you're going to have a better look, you're going to be healthier, and you're going to grow better. And I see it all the time. As soon as I fix people's blood sugars, and the way you can test if your blood sugars are really doing better with the long-acting insulin is not only will your fasting blood sugars be good, but when you go and get blood work, you can ask them to do a hemoglobin A1C. And that is the average blood sugar that you're experiencing over 3 months. Because remember, red blood cells have a 180-day lifespan, so the A1C number will give you your average blood sugar over 3 months, because that's how the red blood cells combine with glucose in the bloodstream. If they're combining too high, that means there's too much glucose. If they're not combining as high, then it means your glucose levels are lower, more controlled. So you want to be under 5.6. Really, ideally, like 5.2, 5.3 is really pretty good for bodybuilders. The lower, the better. But most bodybuilders will not get under that. If you're 5'7", 5'8", 5'9", or higher, very bad. So we want to get you under 5.6. And by fixing your fasting blood sugars with a long-acting insulin, that usually does the job. Now, I know there's a lot of information I just threw at you. You probably can watch this video 4 or 5 times before you actually get the flavor of it and it kind of sinks in. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. I work with a lot of people in fixing their blood sugar issues and addressing, what other medications that they can use, especially if they're taking a medication that is messing up their blood sugars. And we can actually see if maybe what the medications they're taking are even necessary. A lot of times people are on these statins, they don't really need to be on them. They're on beta blockers, they don't really need to be on them, especially if it's messing up your health. That's not a good thing. All right. As you can see, my voice is still not back from the Vegas Olympia, where we were doing a lot of yelling and screaming, but it was a really fun weekend. Dave Palumbo with another supplement and science review. We'll see you next time.